Hello, everyone, and welcome to today's webinar, Making Buildings Bright and Smart Using Lighting Control Systems. I'm Ann Cosgrove, the Editor-in-Chief of Facility Executive Magazine, and this webinar is presented by OSRAM. Before we get started, I'd like to cover a few housekeeping items. First, please note the control panel that is on your screen. This is where you could submit questions at the question box in that panel. You can send your questions in at any time, and our speaker will address them after the presentation. Also, please note the orange arrow on the left side of that panel. Clicking on that arrow will either expand or collapse the control panel, so please be sure the panel is expanded so you can access that question box. If at any time you experience a technical difficulty, please also send a message to us in that question box and someone will address it right away with you. Now I'd like to introduce your speaker today, Chuck Picarillo. Chuck is the Director of Marketing for Encelium Energy Management Systems at OSRAM Slovenia, based in Wilmington, Massachusetts. Over his 20-year career, Chuck has held various marketing, product development, and manufacturing positions within the lighting industry. He's currently focused on helping facility managers transition to intelligent lighting solutions for smart buildings and a more connected, productive world. He holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Chemical Engineering from Clarkson University and an MBA from Northeastern University. And with that, I'll hand it over to Chuck. Hi, Chuck.
Hi, Ann. Thank you very much for that introduction and for having me here today to speak to you about making buildings bright and smart using lighting control systems. In this webcast today, we will cover some of the basics of network lighting control. We'll hit on what's driving the adoption of these systems and smart lighting, the benefits of smart lighting according to a rule called the 330-300 rule. We'll hit on how lighting is enabling smart buildings and the Internet of Things. And then we'll wrap things up with this presentation with some use cases that have incorporated network lighting controls. And we'll learn a little bit about the benefits realized today, as well as how light data could potentially be used in the future. So first things first, what is a network lighting control system, which is sometimes referred to as a smart lighting system? A network lighting control system is a system of intelligent, addressable lighting devices that communicate back and forth with a central controller. These smart lighting systems are actually on the rise. The pace of smart lighting into commercial spaces is forecasted to accelerate to nearly double in use of what it used to be today. And in 2024, it'll be $2 billion. Part of this growth is due to different building regulations and requirements pushing for lowered energy usage from lighting installations. The most common, of course, being California's Title 24, International Energy Code Council, and ASHRAE 90.1. Reason for this push is the devices that can talk together can be managed together to achieve better energy savings. Much like a conductor of an orchestra, a facility manager with a lighting control system can direct how portions of the system operate at different times of the day. Facility managers can realize energy savings up to 75%, which alone could fund the investment of installing the system in a short time. It is a changing world. Staying modern and innovative is also a challenge. For instance, the world is becoming more connected. An estimated 25 billion connected things will be used by 2020, which could be connected with lighting for such things like big data. There'll be a major demographic shift as well within the workplace. Millennials will become 50% of the global workforce in 2020 and 75% by 2025. Requirements for retaining this type of talent will definitely change significantly. Sustainability is another one. It'll continue to be a changing force and a business opportunity as more firms embrace being green. More will look to using smart lighting as part of their green initiative to differentiate themselves from their competition. Everyone wants to be part of these changes, but it's not quite clear-cut. So how do you approach all this? How can an organization realistically determine how to set expectations for making any improvements to the workplace to meet these needs? There are some firms, such as JIL, that have spent some time talking about how to navigate through this ambiguity. They proposed one approach for quantifying the magnitude of how making improvements that are not easy to grasp. They recommended a rule, it's a very simple rule called 330-300. The way it goes is that it actually links three different efficiencies together for identifying the largest savings opportunity. And how they structured it is that for every square foot in the building, organizations typically on each year spend about $3 for utilities, $30 for rent, and $300 for payroll. These are just typical numbers, of course. It could be 220 and 200 or 550, 500, depending on where you are in the world. These figures really are just a useful guide in providing an order of magnitude between the three areas of expenditure. For instance, a 1% energy efficiency improvement could result in savings of about 3 cents per square foot, so simple math. But if you do a 1% space efficiency improvement, that savings could result in 30 cents per square foot. And as you can imagine here, as you move down the pyramid, an additional if you do a 1% improvement in productivity, then you have a significant impact of about $3 per square foot due to employee performance or productivity. What this rule is really highlighting is that the greatest financial savings from making any efficiency improvement to a building may not be in energy, but in productivity. As a beneficial energy savings can be, any investment that can increase occupant wellness or employee productivity can really have a huge bang for the buck here. So if you're looking to make an investment, say if you're doing an investment or an installation of about like 100,000 square feet in space, just as a case in point, then say you are targeting to make a 2% improvement or efficiency improvement in a certain area. Well, if that efficiency improvement is targeted and characterized to improve energy efficiency, well, 2%, and if we go according to this 330-300 rule, that 2% would translate to about $2,000 in savings per year. But if you make a 2% improvement in the way the space is being utilized or how you're managing your real estate costs, that's $20,000. And then if you apply this again and look at it from impact to productivity or how people are working in the space, then you're talking about an even larger savings. So we're talking $200,000 in savings. So really what we're saying here is that that value or that financial impact of a smart building investment can really go beyond than just a lower electricity bill. Smart buildings can create significant financial impact through gathering new insights for improving how we use a space and work in the building. Every smart building needs a smart lighting system. So smart lighting systems aid in solving energy problems today, but this is just the tip of the iceberg. They can make impacts in these other areas. We'll talk how smart lighting can improve spaces and employee productivity in our case study shortly. But first, let's talk about smart lighting. And when we're talking about smart lighting, we are actually referring to smart buildings. So let's talk about the general with smart buildings. Smart buildings is one of the largest opportunities when we talk about the Internet of Things. The Internet of Things, the market is characterized or forecasted to be about $665 billion overall by 2022. That market of Internet of Things, that segment of it that pertains to smart buildings is about 36%, which is about $238 billion. So this market is significant. So how do we capture some benefits out of this market, and what are, and actually see some of this value? Well, one of the things is that smart buildings, as we know, too, maximize energy savings. And this is done by monitoring and measuring energy consumption down to an individual level. Additionally, this opens the opportunity to incentivize individual behavior by giving them transparency or feedback on how they can save energy. Smart buildings can also improve occupant experience and productivity by allowing employees to create and store personalized settings like light, temperature, and air within a space. Smart buildings also improve how spaces are utilized by collecting data about occupant movement patterns, for instance, within a space. Owners can actually use this information to make informed decisions that align to the needs of their stakeholders, such as reducing the amount of rented space or maybe offering more flexible work arrangements for employees. Smart buildings can also make facility management easier. Space is connected closer to occupants create opportunities for automating issues that arise and how to resolve them for clients faster. So we just went through a bunch of benefits for having a smart building. So how do we get there? Well, lighting can get you there. It's an existing building infrastructure that could be leveraged for enjoying many of these benefits. Why? Well, unlike other HVAC and fire safety devices, there are light fixtures everywhere within a space. Each of these fixtures can be more than a light point, but a data node. By turning every light point into a data node, lighting can provide the most granular network of information for smart buildings. Having a smart lighting system in the building provides the opportunity for future added functionality as needs change. As those needs change, then the existing lighting infrastructure can be called upon for delivering new customer values and business models. In essence, lighting becomes a platform for the Internet of Things. So let's talk about the nuts and bolts. How does one implement a smart lighting system or network lighting controls in buildings? Again, we're talking about network lighting controls, which consist of an intelligent, addressable devices that communicate back and forth with a centralized controller. There are different methods for implementing network lighting control to achieve energy savings while ensuring a comfortable and safe work environment. They can be wired, wireless, or a combination of both. Each method has their pros and cons that depend on your client's needs within a space or a building. Whether selecting wired, wireless, or a combination of both networks, all systems involve various intelligent and addressable devices that can send information either wirelessly or through wires to a central controller. These devices include luminaires, switches, sensors, and other lighting devices that interact directly within a space. These devices all have added intelligence that enable them to communicate to the network. This added intelligence enables them to provide more than basic lights on or lights off functionality. For instance, a smart switch can provide insights as to user preferences for certain light levels at certain times of the day. Smart luminaires can deliver lighting scenes that provide tailored experiences. Smart sensors, on the other hand, can also act as eyes of what is happening within a space. All of these devices serve as a conduit of information about what is happening within the building. All that useful information can be transferred to what is called a controller. This controller takes the data collected from various devices and processes information that is sent to a server. The server can reside inside the building or remotely in another location. Data can then be extracted for further analysis. And this analysis can be performed in various formats. Of course, this could be like a laptop, a tablet, or a mobile app for you to actually visualize that information. And pretty much all network lighting systems are structured with these four basic building blocks: devices that collect information, a controller that manages the data, a server that stores the data, and software that visualizes the data. All manufacturers pretty much offer their network lighting systems with these four main building blocks. So now let's see how these various approaches have been applied in the real world. The new headquarters for OSRAM Americas region was a recent example of how network lighting systems can enable buildings to become smarter. After more than a half a century later, OSRAM decided to relocate their office. This presented an opportunity to support the needs of the business as the lighting industry in itself went through a transformation. They wanted to create a new dynamic workplace to cultivate a fresh, energizing environment that fostered innovation, focus, customer experience, and learning. They achieved these objectives with the help of a network lighting system, which also helped them, or the project, earn LEED Gold certification. So how did they do this? Well, the network lighting system installed was a hybrid approach, where there were both wireless and wired devices connected back to a controller. In total, 1,900 nodes, about 50% split, were wired. About 1,000 were wired, 1,000 were wireless. that were connected to the system and managed through visualization software. The end result, about 32% in energy savings by applying various energy management strategies at various times of the day. So as mentioned before, the facility manager leveraged using a network lighting system, acting like a conductor of an orchestra, to utilize various energy strategies in concert with each other to generate these types of savings. But now this facility has an opportunity to capture more savings. What if they use the data from occupancy sensors to optimize how the spaces are being utilized? Let's just say, for instance, that at various times of the day, 50% of the desks in this office building are temporarily not used. In addition, they don't know who or where and when these desks are being occupied. Well, by leveraging some of the occupancy sensors, they could detect some of those free desks within the building. By visualizing the results, what can happen is these free desks can then be communicated to arriving employees. As a result, managers could actually use this as an opportunity to optimize their operating costs. That rented space could be reduced as much as 35% in this example. According to our estimates, that type of reduction, about 35% in rented space, could save up to a little more than $1 million per year in real estate costs. Of course, that magnitude of savings and return on investment depends on the size of currently rented space and the location in other applications. So, but once again, this is just like that 330-300 rule just being applied here for showing those type of improvements other than just energy savings. Let's take another example with education. Carnegie Mellon University, an institution known as a global leader for bringing groundbreaking ideas to market and creating successful startup businesses, actually was part of a research project funded by the Department of Energy. What Carnegie Mellon did is they installed a network lighting system at one of their labs to evaluate different technologies. What they did is they took a network lighting system to try to see if that could help impact occupant comfort. So this is our productivity story. So they used a wireless approach, and the reason they did is they wanted to have a little bit of flexibility to move around some control devices as the study evolved. Many of these switches were battery powered, so it made it very easy for them to move them around within the lab that they were running the experiment. Now, like the prior example with the office, all the smart devices communicated between a controller so data could be sent to a server for analysis with software. As part of the study, the researchers had various user interfaces for occupants to adjust the lighting within the space. As users interacted within the space, researchers recognized that users typically automatically pushed the top button to turn lights on and were satisfied with the full light output without even trying to touch the lower button for the lower light level. So what they did is they played a game and they said, well, let's try and modify through software and communicate to the system that we want the top button to now be the lower light level and see what happens. And what they did is they just gradually changed the light level setting from 100% and then kept trying different increments to try to see if anything would change in occupant behavior or occupant performance or satisfaction within the space. The end result is that they found that they could actually going through found a set point that was desirable enough for a light level that they could drive down their energy savings down 70% without decreasing any of the occupants' satisfaction about being in the space, nor any impact to their performance for any of their tasks that they were doing within that space. So what if those same researchers went back to the lab and they were to use the lighting system to enhance the learning performance of those students? There was a similar study done by OSRAM a few years ago at a couple schools in Germany. And then what they were trying to do is trying to find out whether simulated light or daylight with artificial lighting could increase concentration and cognitive performance in the students. The study used a group of students between the ages of 17 and 20 years old. And what they did is they had these students in this room, and they simulated daylight at different times of the day. And when they changed the daylight and the simulated daylight, they tried at best to try to align to the students' circadian rhythm. They did this by controlling a group of fixtures with blue and white LEDs in the classroom. And what they found is that the group that was exposed to the simulated light actually felt better and performed better during some cognitive tests compared to the group that wasn't exposed to the simulation. What this study is showing is that there is an opportunity to improve productivity through smart lighting systems. Now, lastly, let's talk about a hospital application. The manager at Toronto General Hospital was looking for opportunities to lower the operating costs for the facility. The manager at this particular location focused on optimizing non-patient areas and common areas as a starting point, sort of looking at a low-hanging fruit opportunity for them. They were seeing that if there was, within this space, they actually found that they already had a lighting control system installed, but it was very basic. It was non-smart. And the reason I say it's non-smart is because they did not have any smart devices that were connected back to a central controller. This missing functionality actually is restricting them from their ability to adjust the lighting or managing the system as requirements changed. So the manager was looking for a better solution. The manager decided to and selected a wired system in this scenario to control the spaces. And the reason for that decision was mainly at the time of this decision, there was some apprehension by the manager to utilize any wireless technology. It was relatively new at the time of the installation. And that was primarily the deciding factor of why they selected to use a wired system. The makeup of the system, of course, was like the other two case studies we just talked about. You have, your smart devices, the devices that are just collecting the information about what's happening within the space. You have a controller that's grabbing all of this data and this information. You have that information being sent to a server, and then you're having that information, of course, then visualized with software. Well, the net result of having that installation upgraded to have a network system within those common areas, and this is just in the common areas, they actually saw a reduction of 74% in energy consumption just by making that upgrade. For them, this was about $47,000 in savings for energy costs, and that was significant for them from an operational perspective. And the payback in this particular example for them was was less than 4 years. Now, once again, this was also an energy story where they saved some energy costs, but they have an opportunity still to this day. What if that same manager of this hospital facility would use the existing lighting system to evaluate or influence occupant movement patterns in a hospital? This could be done by just simply connecting some cell phones to the lighting system. Many cell phones today now have what's called beacon technology inside of them. This technology can alert other devices with similar technology about the distance between them. In other words, knowing when you're approaching or leaving a location with a beacon device, of course, as long as you have a cell phone on you. These beacons could be connected to the lighting control system to create some very interesting solutions. One example is that this type of solution could help a nurse locate patients better and navigate them to their next destination faster. Therefore, of course, optimizing their productivity as a nurse, but also it helps improve the quality of care that they're delivering to the patient. There's another type of solution that could be leveraged here that could help visitors navigate through a hospital better, instead of them wandering in the halls trying to find where their relative is or where they're located and walking into the wrong room. And another example is this type of connectivity could also be used on other mobile devices to track them. For example, locating wheelchairs quickly so we reduce the risk of them becoming a lost asset. Now, in summary, smart lighting is creating new and exciting opportunities that the world becomes more connected. So we want to ask yourself, are you using a lighting control system? If yes, consider leveraging it for additional efficiencies for your space, your talent pool, and more. If no, consider the value and services enabled in addition to code compliance and energy savings. Think beyond energy savings and code compliance. Smart lighting can do this and do it well, but you don't want to leave money on the table. There's a potential for more. Every light point is a data node. Why not use it? So with that, I want to say thank you for your time today, and to learn more, visit the following website.
Thanks, Chuck. Thank you for that presentation. We do have some questions that have come in, so we do have some time for Q&A, and we'll get right to that. Let's see. To go back to kind of the beginning of your presentation, we had something come in when you mentioned energy efficiency as one of the big benefits of smart lighting. Can you talk a little bit about how a smart lighting control system can help to satisfy code compliance for facilities, as you mentioned? For instance, what features exist in a smart lighting control system that would help me meet Title 24? And of course, please feel free to talk about any other codes that may be applicable.
Sure. Thank you. Good question. So that comes up a lot about code compliance. One of the things is that, as I was mentioning, the adoption of it is driving a lot of the adoption with the codes that are coming up or with network lighting systems. And part of it is that sensors alone will not get you there. In order to be code compliant, you really need to start using systems like this, network lighting system. They've made many provisions within there that are pretty much leveraging or stating that you need to use something like this. Now, granted, you can use a combination of different methods in order to get there, but really, if you want to have peace of mind, I would recommend that you use a network lighting system, because then you'll hit on to many of the different provisions. Some of those provisions hit on like area lighting controls, automatic shut-off controls, daylighting, demand response, all of which allude to automated settings and program settings. To do that manually, of course, a lot of these provisions, they pretty much excluded those type of methods that you can use in order to be code compliant. So if you really want to have that type of peace of mind, definitely recommend network lighting control. In comparison with ASHRAE, pretty similar. Same with international energy code. They're all pretty much requiring that you have some means of automated control, and the best way to do that is with smart lighting systems, as we've reviewed today. And they all, of course, have those same four basic building blocks. So just look for manufacturers that have those four basic building blocks, and you'll have that type of peace of mind. Once again, that's having smart devices. There's a server, there's a controller, and then you got software. And the combination of all four will get you a network lighting system.
Great, thank you. Okay, so then talking about installation a bit, if I do have a control system in place already, how do I begin to add smart controls to that? Obviously this is a general question, so I don't know more of the details of what that control system is. But if someone does have a control system in place, how might they begin to add smart controls working with companies such as yours? And what do they need to know in evaluating what's in place already?
Yep. Well, back to the four basic blocks again. I mean, of course, not knowing who the manufacturer is in this example, but some manufacturers, offer controls that don't have these 4 basic building blocks. So first and foremost, make sure that you've got the 4 basic building blocks to make up a network lighting system or a smart lighting system. Once you have that, of course, those vary from manufacturer to manufacturer from some of the specifics and details, but as long as you've got those 4 basic building blocks, the next thing that I would do is make sure you got LED fixtures being used in the space. The reason I make that recommendation is because a lot of the functionality or future functionality that we were talking about in this presentation really is going to be realized through the means of using this type of a technology within the light source. It provides you that type of flexibility so that you can manipulate the lighting to deliver the type of tailored experiences that we are talking about seeing in the future. And then lastly, I would say that look for manufacturers that give you the option for upgrading with software and maybe just adding a few components to the existing system that could add that additional functionality that you're looking for. Some manufacturers have that upgradability or scalability so that you don't have to rip out the entire system or network in order to enjoy some of that, those future capabilities.
And Chuck, you mentioned their LED fixtures. So to be clear, is a lighting controls offering such as your company's, does the facility need to be working with LEDs already, or at least put them in as part of the system, or does the system work with other type of lighting or lamps?
Yeah. Good question. So yes, network lighting controls can control all types of light sources, whether it's incandescent, halogen, fluorescent, and LED. It's just that if you want to have that future-proof, it's just a recommendation if you're going down that path, why not just use LED? Some fixtures that are LED fixtures are coming with controls inside of them already. So they're basically ready to be connected to a network system, where some of the traditional technologies like incandescent or fluorescent, you may need to add some additional components in order to have them connect to the network lighting system. But it doesn't limit you in that regards. Many of the network lighting systems that are offered today and going forward have that flexibility to connect to all types of light sources.
Great, thank you. Thanks for clarifying that. And another question around installation or really commissioning specifically. What does commissioning a smart controls lighting system involve? And for instance, does this differ, or I should say add on, does it differ for a wired versus a wireless installation?
Yeah, so there are different types of lighting control systems that are out there, and of course with each of them, some of them do have a different approach in order to get them set up. But I would say that installing and commissioning them, from manufacturer to manufacturer, I would probably say, of course I can only comment on what I've experienced so far, but I would say wireless tends to be the easier to commission, and that's just because I would say just due to the fact that sometimes you might have the scenario where having the control wires installed incorrectly. So just by doing something that's wireless, you eliminate the risk of that problem. However, you don't minimize, that there would never be any issues with anything being installed. As we all know so well, no matter what we're talking about that gets installed, mistakes can happen, and that can completely eliminate any of those comparisons. But I would say wireless can tend to be a little bit easier to set up and commission. Those workflows, though, for setting up, whether it's wired or wireless, does vary from manufacturer to manufacturer. So that's another area to consider in doing those type of evaluations or comparisons. And how you can do that, I would say, is ask the manufacturer to provide maybe a sequence of operations, or to understand what does it take to set up the system before you make that purchasing decision, to just have that advance notice of what you're getting yourself into. Now there's some concerns over, like commissioning as being a challenging activity, especially when we're talking about network lighting controls. But one of those things is that what's happening in the marketplace is that many manufacturers are actually making headways in making that experience much more seamless. They're looking at new and automated means to set up various parameters. They're looking at, having pre-configured set points and pre-installed methods to try to really shorten the amount of time it takes to set up a network lighting system.
Great, thanks. And you also mentioned scalability as an advantage of this type of system. So can you talk a little bit about the scalability? Like, for instance, have you, in your experience, has a facility perhaps installed this type of system in one portion of their facility, maybe to just test it out and to see what the results are, and then they're able to, how are they able to add on if they are finding the need for another area of the facility?
Yep. So we've had some instances where you have a small instance where you just install some of those 4 basic building blocks. But this is what's really important about the 4 basic building blocks, is that if you want to test out the system, many manufacturers have, if you're installing, say an initial setup, you put in a controller into the installation, and then you have your server that's storing the information, and you have it connected to software. It's only a matter of adding these control devices to the system and scaling with your installation from there. So what happens a lot of times with these trial periods, or someone wants to try it at a very small installation, maybe a room or so, that's what would happen is you put in these 4 basic building blocks and just enough switches, sensors, and luminaires that are connected to the network for that one particular space. And then it's just a matter of, as you go from room to room to room, you add these, the smart devices that are then networked back, in essence, to that same controller. Now, of course, from a scalability feature, it varies from manufacturer to manufacturer as to how many of those devices you can connect to one particular controller. But pretty much most manufacturers have, those limitations stated, and then, you just add another controller, and it scales from. So as long as you're doing those 4 basic building blocks, most network lighting systems, you're going to be covered on the scalability side.
Okay, great. Thanks for explaining. Excuse me. Thanks for explaining that. Let's see. Another question. I'm having a hard time justifying the expense of a smart lighting control system. What do you suggest to address that? Justification and kind of selling the value.
Okay. Well, I would first start off with working with your local utility. And the reason I say that, I say that in the beginning of your project because there's a lot of incentives right now that utilities are offering, and actually it's on the growth pattern right now, incentivizing for network lighting controls or even luminaires that have integrated controls inside of them. And it's significant. There's some incentives that are out there as high as $100 per fixture if it's got controls inside of them. And those type of incentives, there's a lot of money there that pretty much could help pay for that trial installation that you want to do within a space and try to see if use a particular network lighting system. So first things first, I would check to see if there's some free money out there. Second, what I would do is don't look at the payback analysis and doing that payback analysis through the lens of just strictly energy savings. Yes, there's possibly, especially if you've got a really good incentive program in your area that can help pay for the entire installation itself. But if you're struggling, if you're in one of those areas where the payback from strictly on an energy side is just not there, energy saving side, then look at this 330-300 rule that we talked about in the presentation to help you, think outside of just the energy saving story and to think of, is there any other possible impact that you can make to real estate costs? Could this investment make an impact on the productivity of the people in that space? Because of course that could have a huge impact on the payroll for the space and for your stakeholders in regards to that investment project. So try to think, I hate to say the term, but think outside the box here and not just the energy savings story, but try to utilize that rule of thumb as an opportunity to help you with your business case and to characterize some other means of showing that payback.
Great. Thanks, Chuck. Well, that is the end of our questions. So I do want to thank our attendees for participating and for sending in those questions. And thank you, Chuck, for your presentation today.
Oh, thank you very much, Ann. Have a good day.
Great. You too. And again, thanks to OSRAM for sponsoring the webinar. A recording of this webinar will be available online at facilityexecutive.com. It will also be made available on the OSRAM website at osram.com. Thanks very much for attending and have a great afternoon.